This is episode 167 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 167 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have David Atwell and Mark Gonneau on the show, and they came on the show to talk about what they're doing at a very high level. They are hotel buyers. They're in hospitality. They talk about the funds that they've started, crowdfunding real estate, which is something I hadn't actually really heard of. Maybe I'd heard about it loosely, but I'd never actually talked to anybody who's been doing it. So they're doing smart hotels in Quebec, in both Montreal and Quebec City. They're scaling up their operations from 25 unit hotels to much bigger. They're running something called a digital concierge, which basically means they don't have a hotel staff member sitting at the front desk. Everything's done digitally through the phone. So it's that whole minimum wage is rising and people need to keep their costs down. Well, this is the strategy that hotel owners are now taking to keep their costs down. So they just really are paying their cleaning staff, but they're not having to pay people to sit at a desk 24 hours a day. So cool concept. It was also very cool that Mark and David found a way to outsource the operations of these hotels. They're really working on a BRRRR model with apartment buildings. So they have kitchens, they have, full units, but they're operating as a hotel with full license to do so. So very interesting concept and model. And they really are taking advantage of the ability to finance residentially and get that 75% loan to value. So I'm confident you're going to enjoy this episode if you're thinking about doing stuff that's a bit bigger and maybe you're interested in getting into hospitality. A lot of us are interested in Airbnb. Well, Mark and David are taking that to a much bigger level here. Just before we jump into the episode, I want to remind you that if you're new to the podcast or you're new to real estate investing, it's strongly advised to go right back to episode 1 and work your way through and learn from all the wonderful guests we've had on the show. There are so many gold nuggets that have been dropped. And again, you can grab my cash flow spreadsheet for analyzing deals on my website at andrew-hines.com. And just click the cash flow tab there and you can enter your credentials and have that sheet sent to you. Finally, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment and just hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell and leave a comment on this YouTube video. If you're an audio listener, if you wouldn't mind leaving a 5-star review and rating, it would be greatly appreciated and it'll help get this podcast to more people. Thanks so much for doing that. Now let's jump into episode 167 with Mark Gonneau and David Atwell. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Mark Gonneau and David Atwell on the show, and we're going to talk about lots of exciting stuff, including some hospitality, hotel buying. This is just what's been relayed to me, and it sounds super exciting. So guys, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, I definitely am looking forward to it. Just to start off, could you guys give me a little bit of a breakdown of who you are, what you've done to date, and how you kind of ended up in real estate and in this particular vein of real estate?
Sure. I mean, that's a bit of a longer story. So my name's David Atwell and with me is Mark Gonneau. We're the co-founders of honeytreegrow.ca. We focus on acquiring real estate deals that have good BRRRR strategy potential. We look for good value add and exit, refinance, and hold properties. Just in the past couple of years, we've been focusing specifically on the extended stay hospitality model and using a digital concierge, essentially buying outdated hotels and converting them into a tech-enabled hospitality product. We're dropping on Addy on April 5th. We have our second deal dropping with them, and we've got some really cool stuff going on that we want to tell you about.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, the bigger history is we've been doing real estate investing for quite some time, both individually and together. We both started out doing things like student rentals and duplexes and more traditional BRRRRs. We then moved into multifamily. We both have done a significant amount of real estate. I did my first 100 doors, took a 7-year break, and then came back and joined forces with Dave here. And then we've done over another 100 doors since then, the past few years.
And the 100 doors more recently, are those doors in hospitality, or are those more apartment doors?
A mix of both.
Okay. So obviously things have switched over to this hospitality model, and we're gonna sort of deep dive into that. Why did the two of you see that as a fit to work together for something like this?
So, I mean, this went back all the way to 2018. We were frustrated with the multifamily market in Toronto specifically. The cap rates were just so incredibly low, even back then. I mean, look where they are now. So we started looking at other markets to find better value and better valuations. I booked a trip out to Montreal just to check out the residential multifamily. And it was actually the hotel itself that I stayed at that caught my attention most, that used this digital concierge concept, that used the extended stays model. And that's really when we started to look into this asset. After 2 years of looking for hotels, we were on the verge of giving up because there's so few deals that pop up. They're just great businesses to have. They make great cash flow. So few people sell them. It wasn't until the pandemic, a few months in, our phone started blowing up and all these brokers started contacting us with hotels for sale.
Yeah, a lot of people got a little nervous when the lockdown started. So I guess that's when you guys saw the opportunity.
Yeah, this is back in 2020. Was it 3 months into the pandemic? We're seeing all these hotels pop up, and it was like we were just waiting for it. We were very ready for it.
Oh, okay. So you struck while the iron was hot.
That's right.
Well, exactly. I mean, I believe it was Warren Buffett that said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." And we were seeing a situation where people were very greedy when it came to multifamily, but very fearful when it came to an extended stays hospitality model.
And I agree with that completely. Like, you always got to be looking at what does everybody else not want to do right now, because that's probably what I want to be doing, or find a way to operate within that space, because if everybody else is avoiding it, then they're missing the opportunities within that space. So,
absolutely.
Very cool that you guys did that. Can we get into a sample deal and talk about what you found, what you've done, and really dive into this digital concierge concept?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So the first deal we bought is in downtown Montreal. It's a 24-unit boutique hotel. It's about 10,000 square feet. We bought it for $3 million. It needs about, I'd say, $40,000 per unit in upgrades to convert it to this digital concierge. The way that we look at it is we're actually underwriting it as multifamily. So every unit gets a kitchen, every unit has private accommodations.
Nice.
This is what banks and appraisers are looking for when they're helping us finance it. So that's one of the most important pieces of this puzzle. It does operate as a hotel, but our lending partners are looking at it as multifamily, which is one of our favorite parts of the deal.
Okay. So you said how many units is it?
24.
24
plus
on this
one retail.
Plus one retail. And
Yep.
What are you putting into the retail for reno?
We're actually converting that into another suite. So there's an office and the retail space, and then there's actually one very large suite that we're dividing in half. So we're going to have 27 units when we're complete.
Oh, okay. So would you say $40,000 times 27 would be a pretty safe number for renovation?
Yep.
Okay. So that's about $1,080,000. And then would you have a number allocated for carrying costs and soft costs and, on top of that?
Yeah. And that's something that's very important when we do our underwriting, because we are very conservative when we do that. So we make sure that when we buy a building, when we acquire a building, we feed it with a full year's worth of operating expenses right from the start. So a full year's worth of mortgage payments, a full year's worth of property tax, utilities, everything, so that even if we don't make a single penny of revenue during that first year, all our expenses are covered.
Right. So in this case, what's the time frame to do? So you buy for $3 million, then you do the 1,080,000 or 800,000, $1,080,000 over a set period of time. Is that about a year's work to reno all those units?
Yeah, it doesn't even necessarily take a year. A lot of it's the planning, coordinating of material and trades, even just getting the building permit, as you know, that's a few months right there. We do plan for 1 year. After 1 year of holding the asset, we will have converted it into this extended stay model, and we'll be starting to look at our refinance and exit.
Okay. So this one, what would your budget for carrying costs have been?
So we had to use a private lender. It was incredibly difficult to get financing, especially 3 months into the pandemic. We had to settle with a 9.25% interest rate plus fees. We prepaid upwards of $300,000 in interest in advance. Our property taxes are about $75,000, and plus we have about $25,000 to $30,000 in insurance. So we're all the way up to $400,000 pre-raised capital.
Yeah.
Now we were very fortunate because July 2020 all the way up until December, we had a pretty strong hospitality recovery. So we were actually making some really good income. We decided not to renovate then and make some money instead of turning down the great summer season. Then we can start doing work in the winter.
Oh, okay. So you guys you guys continue to just operate this as the hotel that it was for a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
some minor upgrades. We put in some
Mhm.
keypad locks, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and just ran it as is.
Yeah.
Okay.
then we
And
shut
you've
down over the
initiated
winter.
that now, though, the renovation?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've completely repainted, redecorated. Truthfully, we've purchased a couple other properties that were in need of more work than this one. So we've
Mhm.
decided to focus our renovations over there first, because this property still makes great income as is.
And that's a nice thing if you can use it to make some income and just maybe even renovate it while operating it. But that's kind of tricky too, because you don't want to affect the stay.
That's very tricky. So by having three
Yeah.
hotels under one roof, that's something that's super beneficial, because we can
Yeah.
shut down one, put all of our resources there, and have the other two still
Yeah.
operating.
So let's just focus on this one for a moment. I know you've kind of you shuffled around a bit, but so you'd
Sure.
be in, if you just finished the renos on this one, you'd be in for about 4.48 million, something like that.
Yeah,
And
very good.
what would your new value be on that, do you figure?
So there's two ways to look at it. There's the hospitality side of the valuation, or there's the multifamily. So
Mhm.
using multifamily, our appraisal came in at an average of $1,250 per month to rent it out. It just says straight residential.
Yeah.
So $1,250 times 27. What are we at? About 368,000 roughly. We operate at a 30% operating expense ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are sitting at about a 4.5 cap in Montreal. This asset will be worth about 5.8 million when it's complete, appraised as multifamily.
Okay, and that's what you're expecting in a multifamily appraisal.
Yeah, right. So
and you just like that as like a contingency, because it gives a lot of ability to pivot to a lender, in a lender's eyes. Like if we needed to take this asset back, we could just sell it as multi, which we know is super hot, versus hotels are a lot more volatile if something like a lockdown or an outbreak happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
And it also gives us flexibility when it comes to operational strategies. Yeah. We can operate as a multifamily. We can operate as an extended stay.
Sure. Okay. So if you were to be able to get 75%, do you anticipate that you could, or would you be closer to 65?
We do anticipate 75% loan to value. We're extremely transparent and upfront with our lenders. They know we are going to run this as hospitality, but they don't underwrite it as hospitality. They underwrite it as multifamily. So we're targeting 75% loan to value, 100% loan to cost. We're probably going to be closer to 90% loan to cost. And with a 25-year amort, 1.4 to 1.5 debt coverage ratio.
Okay. All right. So they'll still, sorry, just recap. So will they take the income as per running it as a hotel, or they're just going to take the $1,250 per unit? They're
just looking at the multifamily appraisal.
Okay.
We still appraise it as hospitality, but that's really just for reference.
Yeah. Okay. So
or if we were to sell it down the road, we could sell it as a hospitality if the market is more beneficial to sell it as hospitality at the time.
I love the flexibility. I'm all for multiple exit strategies, so I think that's
100%.
Brilliant. So on this, let's just get an idea of what the operating would look like. So taxes on this building, you said they're $75,000 annually?
Yeah.
Approximately, yeah.
And then we've got insurance, about $25,000 annually?
Correct. Yep.
And maintenance on something like that. Plus you've got staff. Like what kind of budget do you have for maintenance? And well, I don't know if you've separated those or probably have.
Yeah, so we outsource our operations. We operate at a 50% operating expense ratio. So our operator will collect 50% and then pay the property tax and insurance and all of the utilities and expenses on our behalf.
So just 50%, just clean.
Yeah.
So what number are they taking the 50% on? They're taking on what you actually generate. And if that is
gross
the case,
revenue.
Yeah. So what are you actually anticipating to generate? Not the $1,250 a unit, because we know that's not what's going to happen.
No. So the metric that we use is RevPAR. So we're looking at $100 RevPAR, which is revenue per available room. That means on average, you take into consideration of seasonal changes. We're looking at $100 every day, 365 days a year per suite. So 365 times 27, we're pretty close to just shy of a million. I think it's 981, is it?
985.5 is what I got here.
Okay, so we're just under $1 million there. I like how you're crunching the numbers with us. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
And we apply a 50% operating expense ratio. So we're landing at about 500,000, as our NOI.
Yeah. So
now our cap rate is going to be much higher than compared to multifamily using this analysis.
yeah, so your cap rate's looking at a 5.8 valuation when you're done. You're an 8.5 cap with, I mean, an actual debt coverage ratio of like much
massive,
more.
It's massive. Yeah.
Much more than you need.
Like 2.0.
Yeah, like I'm just doing some adjustments. What do you think your interest rate will be?
Well, so when we're financing as multifamily, they know that there's that risk involved of hospitality. So it's going to be higher on the A side. It's more like B rates. We're looking at 4.5 amortized over 25 years.
Okay. So then your debt coverage ratio I got here with the higher interest rate being about 1.7. I might have made a mistake here, but it's so, but you're still showing a net monthly cash flow of just shy of $17,000 a month on that operation, which is pretty cool.
It's spectacular, right? Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, you had a comment.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out, using the $500,000 NOI, even though our cost basis, we're at about 4.5 million there. The cap rate that we're looking at upon completion is actually lower sevens at that point. On our acquisition, we're about 8.25, 8.5, but on completion, we're about 7.5. So, the appraisal is working out to be upwards of $7 million
as an extended stay.
Right. Yeah. So if we actually value it correctly, so 5.8 is extremely conservative. Obviously, buyers are going to see more value in it. Banks want to be conservative. You're playing their game. But we know the market, how it goes so crazy. And I don't think banks really know how to handle this stuff, like this craziness in the market. They don't really know what to do with it because their parameters don't really allow them to lend to you based on those values, right? If you don't meet their debt coverage ratio, they're just not going to give you the loan, or they'll scale it back. They'll scale it back until it works. And if you don't have the money to come up with the difference, then no deal.
Yeah. Exactly. But if you look at the financing there, say the bank appraises at $7 million as a hotel, they only want to give you 50% loan to value, 65%. Mm-hmm. At best, you're landing at 3.5 to 4.25 anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's going to have a much higher interest rate than the multifamily side. So when we appraise it, we're quite happy that they're looking at multifamily. Mm-hmm. The other exciting thing is our debt ability is going to follow the multifamily market. Just 2 years ago, when we acquired our first deal, the rental rate they appraised it at was only $1,050. It's gone up 20% over the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. And once it goes up another $100 or so, we're going to be able to increase our debt on this and pull some equity out and go buy some more cool properties with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many incredible opportunities with the way the market's going up. I mean, it's also frustrating, but I mean, we're going to watch these next couple of years, probably things go even crazier. And then, you're going to have a lot more opportunity to refi. I mean, as it is, it looked like, if you do get the 5.8 value and you get 75%, give or take $130,000 net investment for you guys.
Yeah, we're pretty close to 100% loan to cost. And that's a 2-year deal at most, right? So we're thrilled with that.
Yeah, I mean, like how much would 16,900 change a lot of people's lives? So, and that's just one deal. It's actually funny. I just interviewed a guy the other day, and I'm going to be airing his episode. And he bought one in Grand Bend, 15 units. He's figuring on about $1 million in revenue after he's done.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
Now, not the digital concierge model, which I want you to tell me about, because I mean, it's not that your expenses are that low at 50%, but it may be a little bit lower than regular hospitality.
It is. So regular hospitality is sitting at a 65% operating expense ratio.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's use $1 million revenue as our starting point, because that's going to be really easy for math. Even just having somebody sitting at the front desk for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you're going to pay 3 people $40,000 to $50,000 each. Yeah. So times 3 people. So you're looking at 120,000 to 150,000 just in front desk staff. We're not eliminating staff entirely, but we have one team that can remotely manage multiple locations. So even just using that metric, where now 3 people can now manage 4 locations, 5 locations, 6 locations, we're really bringing that operating expense ratio down from 65 and even closer to 50. Another thing that needs to be taken into consideration by installing our smart water valves and our smart electricity, for example, that's actually reducing our insurance costs and our utility expenses as well, because we know if water's been running for half an hour and there's not a guest in that room, it's going to get shut off automatically. We know if somebody's leaving the lights on after a checkout, that also gets shut down automatically. So all these things add up to a reduction of our operating expense ratio from 65 down to 50.
Okay, so there's a little bit more of an investment there to add these features, all
That's right.
Wi-Fi connected and controlled in the
Yep.
cloud, I guess.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, and when you say digital concierge, so people walk up and what, they check in on an iPad?
No, it's everything through their phone, so they can download an app, and the app will provide instructions on either a keypad code using Salto locks, or they can use Bluetooth to remotely unlock their room, or using NFC where they can just tap it. So a guest arrives, they're provided instructions on how to access the building, directions on how to access their unit, and they're able to create their own experience using their smartphone and create and from an environment that we've created for them.
Very interesting. Now, are people that receptive to downloading an app, or do they have to download the app?
They're not receptive. They also get the instructions through their email. So they'll get instructions where they just get a keypad. But if someone's staying for more than 3 to 5 days, they're really going to want to download the app, because there's all kinds of other cool things that can be done with that as well to make their stay more comfortable.
Yeah,
the app isn't mandatory.
Right, and that's kind of critical. I can't. I mean, I get it, sort of. Like, I don't like downloading apps, but when I ask people, like, "Hey, can you download this Messenger app?" They're like, "No." No, I don't want to.
And I respect that. You know, we don't want to create problems for people trying to stay at a hotel, but it really does add a lot of value to their stay if they're willing to do so.
It's interesting. I went to a golf simulator that had a similar approach. They sent an email, and you can actually press the button given in the email. You just press it, and then the door would buzz you open. And it would only do it on your set time. So if you had a book from 1 to 2, it would only open 5 minutes before 1 and up until, probably 5 minutes after 2. They had similar technology. I was just saying, I'm assuming that's fairly similar technology to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our door codes change automatically. Within 10 minutes of the guest arriving, they get a new keypad. And then within 10 minutes of them checking out, the key code changes. If a guest decides that they want to stay longer, they can notify us, and that'll extend their keypad. But if somebody decides to overstay their welcome, well, unfortunately, that unit's going to shut down on them, and it's going to lock them out, and they're not going to be able to stick around for too much longer.
And what happens for the cleaning staff getting into these units?
That's right. So they're given unique codes as well, and it's only in a specific time frame. So if they're supposed to be there from 1 to 2 o'clock cleaning a room, that's the only time they can access the space. If it's 9 p.m. the following week, they're still not going to be able to access the building. That way, you're sure the right people are at the right places at the right time. You're not getting theft. You're not getting break-in from maintenance people or cleaners or previous guests. The codes change as soon as their time to be there is gone.
And where'd you find somebody to manage this for you at 50%? I mean, like, to just be able to hand that off, like, that sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it took a lot of research. We were looking for this asset since 2018, and we spent 2 years looking and doing our research and trying to find deals, right? And once we acquired it, we had done a huge amount of research on it. And there are companies out there that exist that will operate using a head lease model or a revenue split, a triple net revenue split, essentially. And it just took a lot of research to find the right people.
Okay. And what's your typical approach? Because a lot of people, they wouldn't even know where to start. Like, what would your typical approach be? Like, you want to buy this. Was it networking with people in these areas? Was it, a lot of Google searches, combination of all the above, forums, what have you?
Yeah,
combination of all the above and the ground game. Having people like Dave going out and knocking on doors and getting to know the people in the areas.
Okay.
Yeah, like Mark actually found our operator, and it was actually perfect timing because they had lost all kinds of business from their Airbnb, and which meant they had the bandwidth to take on a full blown hotel like this.
So I just said they had the ability to take on that kind of arrangement.
Yeah, and they had past experience in running hotels even in other countries.
Oh, okay. So this is a big company then.
No, they're not necessarily a big company. They're two individuals that have just done a lot of work in hospitality specifically.
Yeah. Okay. They've worked for larger companies and then have set up their own shop.
Yeah.
Nice.
We have looked at using companies like Sonder, for example, and that is something we are looking at. We're working on an acquisition in Quebec City, and it's a much higher end hotel. It's a 4-star hotel. where you're going to have a more high maintenance client and high maintenance guest. This is something where we're going to look at acquiring it, converting it into a Sonder, updating it to their standards, and just simply handing it off to them as well.
Yeah, because like you're doing a lot of stuff that's very specific for the tools of the operator, right? The operator would be handling all the day-to-day using the technology you've provided. Is that how they wanted it? Or did they want, like, would they rather do some of this, or they said, hey, just do this exactly for us and we'll take it from there?
Well, when you look at a company like Sonder, they hand you their Sonder standard package. And so you know exactly what kind of lighting you're using, what kind of flooring, what kind of Salto locks, even which product of Salto that you're using. That's all outlined. When we partnered with our group, with our current operators, we explained to them, we want to build something that looks and feels like a Sonder, but we're going to keep everything in-house. We're going to use our own branding, and they're going to take it, hand it off to them, and they're going to operate it as if it's almost like a mini Sonder, so to speak.
Okay. I'm not familiar with Sonder. Is this like a hotel chain in Quebec?
Well, actually, they're worldwide.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they also do the smart hotel extended stays model.
Okay.
They are one of Airbnb's biggest competitors. They're about a $2 billion company. They are from Montreal. As a young entrepreneur named Francis Davidson, and he graduated from McGill, and he started managing Airbnb operations. And the concept of Sonder is to create a head lease Airbnb experience for established hotels all over the world. Very
interesting. So they're, how old of a company would you say? I just pulled up
like
their website.
Five or 6 years.
Okay. So Sonder was sort of the model you guys based it off of. You saw what they were doing, wanted to keep it in-house, but you said you could have Sonder manage your hotels as well. You be the owner and just outsource to them.
It really depends specifically on the hotel asset itself. They have about a minimum unit quantity of 50 doors to make it worth their while to set up their teams and all that. We're buying stuff that's about 25 right now. So these hotels specifically, they said we would love to, but there aren't enough units. But however, there's another property in Quebec City that we're working on acquiring where this would make sense.
Okay. So break down for me what you've acquired to date in this type of property.
Yeah, so we have 3 in Montreal. Each is about, so we have 2024 Saint Denis, 874 Sherbrooke, which is our first Addy drop, and 2048 Saint Denis, which is our second Addy drop. They're all within about a 1.5 kilometer radius of each other. Yeah, the two on Saint Denis.
What's Addy drop? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, addyinvest.com. It's the crowdfunded real estate platform, Vancouver-based tech company. It allows everyday Canadians to invest as low as $1 into real estate.
And are these exempt market products?
They are not.
It falls under a similar exemption, but it's a crowdfunding exemption as opposed to an OM exemption.
Oh, really? Okay. That's a very interesting. So can anybody do that for a project, like for syndicating a project, or are you syndicating single projects, or are you doing it as a fund?
So anybody can invest in Addy, but Addy obviously has specific issuers that they put up on their shelf and that they're willing to partner with.
So if you can get Addy to put you there, there's nothing regulatory that would stop you.
No,
correct.
Oh, no, we simply have to go through the due diligence process with Addy. They have to approve us as issuers and as well as approve the product and the project that we're doing. And then they simply become an investor.
Okay. So they're an investor. And then, so are people buying shares in Addy, or how is that working?
So Addy sets up. Yeah. So our investor is Addy, and then Addy turns around and issues an OM.
Okay.
And everybody else is able to invest into Addy's OM.
So Addy is its own fund then.
Yeah, and they go through the crowdfunding.
Well, they set up a corporation. That corporation buys units of our LP, and then the Addy members buy shares of their corporation.
That's very cool. I haven't heard anyone talk about this on here yet. So, I mean, we've talked about funds a bit, but we haven't talked about Addy, obviously, why I asked you.
But I mean, what makes Addy great is you don't have to be an accredited investor or even an eligible investor. Anybody can invest, and it's as literally as little as $1.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That would even cover processing fees. Obviously, no one's going to do it for $1, but
well, the average investment's about $500 on our deal. I mean, one of the most exciting things for us is, we had 792 people invest in our Sherbrooke deal. That's 792 people who are likely going to stay at their own hotel if they're ever visiting Montreal. So it's in part increasing demand for our own real estate, which could even drive the NOI further.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, right? People want to, feel proud. Oh, I invested in this one. I've got a few bucks into this one. So that's pretty cool. So you were able to generate the funds that way. Now, what's the cost of the funds look like, and what portion of your funds are coming as equity that way?
So there's no cost to the fund. So all of our capital partners are close friends, family, and accredited investors in our close community. So we're not outwardly advertising to the public. We're not bringing in complete strangers. It's all people from our own networks and our own capital resources. Addy doesn't charge us any fees for buying units in our deals. What they get is a $25 membership fee from each one of their members as their annual cost.
That's their only way of monetizing. Other than that, it just covers they just cover their expenses, or their expenses come out of the $25 a month.
The $25,
yeah.
That's very, very cool. I didn't.
It's a great platform, and we're honored to be a part of it. We submitted our deal to them back in July, and it was a solid 6-7 months of due diligence on us to make sure we were the right GPs to work with them. And once we got greenlit and they as GPs and our deal, we're so excited to work with them. I've known of Addy since 2018, 2019, and really around the time we were launching honeytreegrow.ca. I thought these guys were going to take over all crowd-funded real estate. I thought they were GPs. I had no idea that it was a tech company.
Wow. And what does it look like, your typical deal? Like, how much equity are you guys giving up?
It's about a third.
Yeah.
So 1/3. So you guys are still bringing in significant cash for the deals as well. And then you have about a third coming in as other investors. And how do you see yourselves being able to use that platform or that model and carry it forward and grow? Like, what ideas does this have going in your head, or how does this have you thinking bigger?
Well, one of the most important things is connecting with our digital concierge. When we have a guest stay with us, the reason we got into hospitality is because I stayed at a hotel and I thought it was cool and I wanted to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. Well, our digital concierge is actually going to be able to sell our guests an Addy membership. We may have a promotion where it's like, leave a 5-star review, get a free Addy membership. And oh, by the way, you can actually own a piece of this hotel or this next hotel that you're staying at. Maybe we buy a place in Vancouver. We think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to create a community around that and create a hospitality brand of travelers and owners staying in their own real estate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what would you put a cap on it? So you say up to 33% or up to this hard number, which represents 33%, will be sold?
That's going to be up to the discretion of Addy, essentially. But each Addy member can only invest a maximum of $1,500 per deal anyway, right?
Okay.
We're in discussion of what that may look like to be a more fluid investment. Because if we have a guest staying and they want to pop in $1,500, well, that means there needs to be 1,500 units worth of equity that they can buy, right? So we're going to speak with them to figure out a way how we can turn this into incorporated with our mutual fund trust, for example, which we're opening in a couple months.
And for your mutual fund trust, will actually be, what do you call? Sorry, I'm blanking. Registered fund eligible?
Yes.
So people can invest their RSPs. So that you're actually going to have an offering for through an EMD?
Yeah, that will have an offering for through an EMD.
All right. I guess it's an offering memorandum it needs to be able to do registered.
Yeah, it'll be offering memorandum and declaration of trust that'll be sold through an exempt market dealer.
So that's significant. Now, is there another, like, obviously you have an exemption through the crowdfunding, and I guess that part of it is the limit of how much each can invest, which is understandable. Are there any other exemptions that you guys could have taken, or did you have to go EMD as far as you know?
Well, in order to get the registered funds, you need to go through an EMD. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So there might have been other ways to get exemptions, but it wouldn't have been RSP eligible, wouldn't have been TFSA eligible.
Correct. I mean, you can. So I mean, anytime you're getting investors from the general public, then you have to be very conscious of the securities regulations. They're very, very stringent with regards to what you're able to do and who you're able to speak to. The biggest thing is they don't want any of your information going out to the general public unless you have an OM.
So without an OM, you're very limited to accredited investors that you know, because I mean, the Securities Commission doesn't even want you advertising for accredited investors.
Right.
It's quite simply just.
And that's my understanding too. But I've heard like in the States, there's a different approach though. Down here, I was just wondering if we have that something similar. Like you can, I don't know if you can advertise, but you can advertise to non-accredited, but only take like 35, and that's okay.
So there is something called an eligible investor category in Canada. But again, that has to go through an EMD.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. This is a whole new world. I'm looking at this avenue as well. And there's just so much to know and so many conversations to have. It just like never ends.
I mean, we've sat on conference calls where we've had 4 different lawyers and 2 different accountants on one call.
And you can't have them without each other, right? Because you have the lawyer saying one thing, the accountant saying another, and then you want to have at least, one guy who's set up like 3 funds already.
Well, exactly. and then the best part is I ask them one question and then they all look at each other and say, oh, well, we're going to have to call up so-and-so, the tax lawyer, to get the answer. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, you've got 4 different lawyers here and 2 accountants, yet none of them know the answer to the question yet. They still have to go get yet another lawyer involved.
It's so complicated. That's why I feel like it's best to just find somebody who set up 3 of them, say, guide me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very interesting business though. And like that, I really do think that's a great way to grow. If you guys do that. So that's coming how soon?
Hopefully in a couple of months we'll have that.
We've already initiated it.
We've already initiated lots of discussions with the lawyers. It's simply a matter of pushing the paperwork through with the lawyers, and then from there going through the appropriate steps with the OSC here in Ontario.
Okay. And will it be strictly raising in Ontario, or you'll be raising across Canada, potentially in the US?
Across Canada for now. Once you get into the US, it's a whole other setup. Everything has to start over from scratch to be able to raise in the US.
Well, and plus you'd have the cross-border tax filing issues, and that's the biggest headache.
Sorts of issues.
Because I'm looking to do stuff down here in the US, and it's just so much more, just the accounting side. Oh, you don't want double taxation, so you have to structure it this way.
Right.
But no one else wants us to structure it that way. The lenders don't like it that way.
Yeah.
That kind of fun stuff. All right. So where do you guys see yourself in 5 years from now?
We look to be growing Honey Tree, really, and have that grow so that we have locations not just from the hospitality standpoint, but continuing with other property types such as multifamily, and going nationally as far as Canada, and frankly internationally as well. We were looking quite aggressively at going into the States just before COVID hit. Then borders closed, which prevented us from being able to go down there and take a look and do the research that we wanted to do. And as Dave mentioned earlier, then these opportunities presented themselves here. So we're going with these opportunities now, but we still have an eye out for other opportunities, not just elsewhere in Canada, but also down into the US.
Yeah, we do believe there's going to be a big shift occurring in the hospitality space over the next 10 years. This was something that was already beginning to occur in around 2015, where this technology was becoming really available and really popular. And so we want to be a part of that, where we're going to be targeting boutique hotels and helping these owners exit their deals. And they could even potentially invest with us, so they can sell us their deal, take their proceeds and invest with us. We'll convert it into a digital concierge. We'll convert it into a smart hotel, so to speak, and bring new life to their asset and essentially implement the BRRRR strategy for them. So we are going to be going out looking for these deals all over and looking to add these to our mutual fund trust.
Very cool. And is there anything else you would have wanted to share about all this and your experience that I haven't asked you about?
I think you've done a great job. You've really pulled this deal apart quite thoroughly. I'm very impressed how you're crunching numbers with us at the same time too.
Yeah. I get a lot of feedback that's what people like about this podcast, is I dig into the numbers with people.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it kind of activates people who are watching and listening a little bit. Like they can really conceptualize the deal when they understand the numbers better.
And also proves that your guest knows their numbers themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good practice, right? And then you can think, oh, okay, I could do that. Just need to find an operator that'll charge me 50% and we're good. Let's go get a deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, there's lots of people who have like bought a condo and put a condo out on Airbnb, and they recognize both intuitively and through action that you can get more cash flow by renting it on Airbnb than you could through a monthly rental. Yeah. But that does, now you're running a business, and that comes with extra work.
It does.
And it also affects your financing. But the biggest thing is it puts you in jeopardy or at the whim of the municipalities. I mean, if you look at all those people that bought a condo in downtown Toronto and were renting them on Airbnb, and then City of Toronto changed their bylaws, and now you're not allowed to rent the condo on Airbnb, it really changed things. So one of the things that's really crucial for us is we're buying properties that have the proper license. So we're not going to be in a situation where all of a sudden we can't rent this as a daily or weekly rental. But there's nothing that prevents us from renting this as a monthly rental.
Right. Just the HST application. Although, would that apply in Quebec? Would you have to charge, I guess, GST?
Yeah, it's PST, QST.
Yeah, QST.
Yeah. That is an excellent point. So there's an organization called the CITQ, which is the Center of Tourism Information in Quebec. They were essentially created to help affordable housing. There were all kinds of ghost Airbnb hotels being set up in Montreal and taking housing away from the market. Well, that's a very serious problem, especially in today's lifestyles where affordability is just incredibly difficult for young people. That's why they said, okay, you have to have this license to even be featured on Airbnb's platform. So we're targeting these CITQ licensed hotels, and they have spaces large enough to be converted into a multifamily private accommodations. And then we can convert it to the extended stays model.
Very cool. All right, guys, this is a really interesting conversation. What I liked about this was just